Hello and welcome all to our interview session. My name is Amitanshu Verma. I work with Center for Financial Accountability, and today we are going to discuss the trajectory of hydropower and critically looking at the hydropower development in India, especially focusing on the eastern part of the country. As all of you might recall that this is October is the month when last year the glacial lake outburst flood happened in North Sikkim, which led to near total collapse of the Teesta Stage 3 dam. So, to discuss some of these issues and to analyze them and to put their insights, we have with us Snigdhendu Bhattacharya. Snigdhendu is a seasoned journalist and very well known for his in-depth reporting on environmental, political, and social issues in India. His career spans over 2 decades with contributions to leading national and international publications. He worked for Hindustan Times for 13 years till almost 2020, and from then on, he has been working as an independent journalist with regular contributions to Outlook, Caravan, Times of India, and many more publications. He also has two books, non-fiction books with HarperCollins, one on Lalgarh and the Legend of Kishanji, and focusing on the left-wing extremism movement and on the saffron experiment in Bengal. More for the purpose of this interaction, Snigdhendu has critically explored the impact of development projects, particularly in the hydropower sector in eastern India. And his reporting in this area has shed a lot of light on environmental challenges, displacement of indigenous communities, and long-term sustainability concerns associated with the hydropower sector in the region. And his meticulous coverage highlights the complex issues between energy demands and environmental preservation. Welcome, Snigdhendu, for joining us today for the interview. It's a real pleasure that you confirmed for this interview, and really looking forward to your inputs. Let me just give a brief introduction before we go on to the questions. So, as we all recall, that this is the month when the Teesta 3 dam collapsed in North Sikkim last year, and it led to almost, at least reportedly, led to on more than 100 lives being lost, livelihoods being lost, homes and villages being destroyed. And Teesta 3 was one of the largest projects, hydropower projects in Sikkim, and the largest project in Sikkim and one of the biggest in India, and with a capacity of almost 1,200 megawatt. And from the beginning itself, this project was a focal point of controversy because it had raised the concerns of environmental degradation, displacement of indigenous and local communities, loss of cultural heritage, and the fact that it was located in a region which is geologically very sensitive and seismically very sensitive. There were questions on why it was being built there. And we know that the collapse of this dam and what has followed from then on, it raises some very crucial questions on our development trajectory, especially when it comes to hydropower. Because hydropower is one of the key areas which India wants to invest in, wants to explore in order to achieve net zero targets by 2070, so that our energy mix should not produce any carbon emission. And because hydropower is recognized as a renewable and low carbon energy source, it is one of the crucial components in it. But as the Teesta example shows, and it really puts a question mark on to what extent hydropower can be touted and promoted as a sustainable source of energy. We also know that 1 year down the line, there are reports of compensation have not been given to communities. The homestay economy in Sikkim also having been affected by the collapse. The tourism sector has gotten affected. So the socio-economic effects of the collapse seem to be continuing, and we will have a chance to talk about them to Snigdhendu. And what we have seen in the last 2 years, that hydropower sector and its effects have really manifested. Whether it is the Joshimath land subsidence, where the local community held the NTPC-run Tapovan Vishnugad project responsible for the land subsidence in Uttarakhand. And then on Teesta itself in Sikkim, we saw in August that how another landslide led to the collapse of power infrastructure associated with the Teesta Stage 3 dam. So what we see is that there is a cascade of disasters which seems to be unfolding. And to begin with, I would like Snigdhendu to introduce our viewers that because we know that all of these disasters, it's not as if they were not predicted or not anticipated. We know that the local communities, we know that the scientific community and environmentalists had been raising these concerns, had been warning them. So I would request Nigdendu to probably take our viewers through some of the early warnings which were given both from the community and from independent experts towards this, which were ignored, even as more dams are being planned on the Tista. Snigdhendu, I invite you to speak.
Hi, hello. So it's really good to be here and share my ideas and my experiences. I won't say my ideas, but experiences. I had, as a journalist, the opportunity to uh, closely examine the impact of some of the dams in the northeast, like in Manipur, in Assam, in Arunachal Pradesh, and in Sikkim, of course. What I saw while traveling to those places and speaking to the local people is that no one is really, I mean, the majority of the people, they are in one way or another against them. And if we talk about disaster, they show us two kinds of disaster. One is one which the larger public can see, like when this cloud bursts happen or a glacial outburst flood happens, and it takes away, it hits the dam, and then it just runs through towns and villages and destroys everything. That's one kind of disaster. The other kind of disaster that unfolds silently away from the media glare and public glare, affecting only local community. So, if we look at these kinds of silent uh, impact, which uh, goes unnoticed by the larger public, then we can take, for example, the case of Manipur, where this this is the oldest of hydropower projects in northeast India, and it was seen as both for power supply and for irrigation. Irrigation was also an important part of this project. But uh, when I traveled there, what people say is that they have given, I have listed uh, at least uh, 8 to 10 varieties of rice, local rice, indigenous productions, which have disappeared, which are no longer like like ngamu, pengba, ngaton, which is also called kabak, ngakra, and the likes of moirangfo, takchingfo, chimle, tauthabi. These kinds of rice varieties, indigenous rice varieties, they have disappeared. Why and how they have disappeared? Because they used to be grown in the lowlands, and when this dam happened, this lowland got submerged. Earlier there used to be this phenomenon of this lowland remaining under cover of water for a certain time of the year, and free from water for the rest of the year, which is the time when farmers used to grow these rice varieties, which used to make them self-sufficient. Now, what has happened is that that lowland is gone, that those rice varieties are no longer produced, and so it has hurt their self-sufficient. And at the same time, if we look at all the uh, trouble around Loktak Lake, and so this Ithai barrage, this has in this has had another big impact in the production or in the harvest of fishes, because this because of this barrage, now a great number of now that there has been a great reduction in the quantity of fish that used to be produced, and so the fishermen around Loktak Lake and also Ithai Village, and especially downstream of Ithai Village, they have lost two of their main sources of self-sustenance, rice and fish. This is this silent discount. Now, if we come to the overt distraction, then the first issue is floods. Now, in many cases, these dams are argued to work for flood protection so that they can regulate water flow, they can serve for the purpose of at least three major arguments we have and four major arguments for having large dams. One is irrigation, the other is power, and which is intrinsically linked to revenue. So, power and revenue, this is the other argument. The other argument, the third argument has been flood control, that they help control flood. But what we see in effect, and what I mean, when I spoke to people of flood affected areas, I mean, the areas which get regularly affected by, routinely affected by floods, and have dams in the vicinity, like in Assam, in Lakhimpur, where this movement has been going on. This is supposed to be India's largest dam as of now. Uh, they have this is 2 gigawatt. Uh, this Lower Subansiri project, but they have even bigger projects in the pipeline. Those in Arunachal, the Italian project. The Italian is slightly, I mean, stuck now, but I'm not sure if it's really stuck. And then there is the Bang multipurpose project. These are even bigger, so greater than 2 gigawatt. And we have uh, this is still in the planning stage, but the government has been pushing for it. That's in Arunachal. That's in northern Arunachal. Uh, there is a plan for a 10 gigawatt uh, uh, on Yarlong Sangpo, because the government is citing Chinese dam building on the other side of the border, and so they're citing water security as the main reason for the dam. But you must be aware that these local farmers organization uh, have been protesting this dam, and there have been some confrontation with the government also. So the uh, anti-dam activists in Arunachal Pradesh have long been alleging over the past few months that the government is cracking down on them. Uh, so now let's come back to this Lower Subansiri, which is as of now we suppose it to be the largest one, 8 to 50 megawatt schemes there. See how long it has remained stuck. It has remained stuck because of protests coming from the anticipation that this dam will flood Lower Subansiri, this Subansiri district, and downwards. whenever there is heavy rainfall in Arunachal Pradesh, people have genuine fear. And people have shown me when I went to visit some area there, they took me to the villages where erosion was taking. Erosion had really become dangerous, taken to dangerous proportions. And then there was flood and destruction of natural calamity on the project itself, which halted it several times. So this project got delayed by, I think, more than a decade. And even when after getting the Supreme Court nod, when they started to expedite it, and when they said that it's going to happen in a year, that 1 year uh, went on expanding to 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, because it got hit by one calamity or another, all related to flood and irregular rainfall pattern. And then when I asked the NHPC authorities about this, they gave me a written reply of, I think, 45 pages, uh, showing how the dam is supposed to control erosion, and how erosion is not related to the dam. Erosion is happening as a natural phenomenon, and how they have been spending money to ensure that these dam doesn't cause flood, but it regulates flood. But at the same time, the catch point was that they have a limit up to some 30 or 35 kilometers downstream, to which they will do some embankment protection work. And what was happening beyond that was beyond their consideration. So the villages which I saw, that very day there was uh, uh, multiple instances of erosion where large chunks of the village was swept away. And these people were telling us that NHPC doesn't bother because NHPC says it's beyond their concern, and the government doesn't bother either. This same thing, the same allegation comes from people of Sikkim against their government, when they say that the NHPC doesn't bother about this regular landslides in Dikchu, this NHPC, this Teesta 5, which is in Dikchu. And whenever these happens, the government and the NHPC officials come, make some visits, pay some visits, and then it's business as usual. So when I asked NHPC officials about it, this regular happening, this regularly getting struck by disasters, especially landslides and floods, they again argued that landslides are happening in as part of regular phenomenon. That part of the area is landslide prone. Now, this is exactly what the local people are arguing and saying, but they are drawing a different conclusion. The local people are also saying that these areas are unstable for building such big infrastructure. So when they were saying that these areas are unstable, these areas have great problems in itself, and a large project will only magnify its impact, then the government comes up with the argument that we have all the protective mechanisms. But when these protective mechanisms fail, then they blame it on natural occurrence. This is the general pattern by which the governments respond. And if we look at the approach of the political parties, then there is a definite pattern of their alignment in interest with hydropower, with hydropower projects. Because if we look at Assam, this Lower Subansiri project, The BJP opposed it when they were in opposition. Rajnath Singh, he was a top BJP leader. He came to Assam and I think ahead of the 2024 election, 2014 election or maybe 2016 assembly election. He went to Assam and promised scrapping the project altogether. But by the time they came to power and the case was in court, they then decided to leave it on court. And as the project got the court's approval, in which the government also had some role, uh, soon the BJP stand changed and they became a very staunch pro-dam party. In and in Sikkim, Pawan Chamling, who has been the chief minister for 23 years and the main mover of hydro project dream, Sikkim's hydro project dream, he, before the last assembly election in Sikkim, after which since he has lost power, he promised that if he returns to power, he will scrap all upcoming projects and never allow any dam in the entire Zongo Valley. So when Chamling was the chief minister, he was the strong hydropower ally, and at that time he faced opposition from others. But the moment he has lost power and he wants to come back to power, he is he is addressing the issues of dam. He is promising to solve it. Why? It is why opposition parties speak for the dam victims. It is because they are huge in number. It is because the impact, the adverse impact sufferers are a large number of people, which is why these parties, whenever in opposition position, try to get that symptom.
Thanks a lot, Snigdhendu, for taking us through the complex socio-political context of these dams and how the community, whether it is farmers, like whether it is tribal communities, how they are protesting in different parts of the northeast India. Uh, I also wanted to know that within communities, when communities protest against hydropower, or not just protest, people who are affected by the projects. So these projects, when they come, they are announced as that they will bring a lot of benefits, that they will bring jobs, that they are going to ensure energy security, that they will bring quote unquote development. So, is there in the people of Northeast, people who are affected by dams, is there a disaggregated sense, or is there a consensus in opposing hydropower across? Because, like in certain areas in Himachal, we have seen that there are times when the demand is of compensation rather than scrapping the project. If you can give us a sense of how a more disaggregated sense of community perception and how it might have changed over time after seeing and witnessing some of these landslides and disasters induced by hydropower.
No, a division is always there. A division is always there in every project, and these are no exceptions. The government tries to actively exploit these divisions because people perceive projects differently in a sense that those who are more attached to their land and they are more who are more dependent on whatever he gets from his surround or her surroundings, uh, like the ponds or rivers or local low-lying lands or forests. These people tend to be more protected. But people which having some kind of ambition or to move beyond their areas, and these kind of people with certain ambitions, they usually bargain on the compensation aspect. So these kinds of division happens, and that which is why uh, is there is always a section which supports the project if their demand for compensation is met, and there is another section which vehemently oppose, which doesn't want to consider any question of compensation. Uh, in we can see this in all projects, but in the Northeast, what I have been witnessing over the past 3 4 years, that there is a growing concern, a growing trend also among uh, to prevent, to preempt, rather than bargaining for compensation. Uh, and but so it will be very interesting to see what happens with the three big projects of Arunachal Pradesh, how the government moves forward with them. Dibang multipurpose, and what finally happens to Italy, and the 10 gigawatt project that they are citing on national security and social and water security purposes, how they go about it. But uh, for Divan, I mean, this division, it allowed the government to somehow move ahead with the work. And though the actual physical work hasn't started, but paperwork and etc. They have. So this is always there, and this will always remain there, I think, because there will in society always be some kind of people who will try to hold on to their roles, who are happy as they are, and there will always be a section of people who are not happy as they are, uh, who want change. So these people might be welcoming change agents. But if we look at job generation, income generation at the grassroots level, how much income are hydropower projects generating? On the permanent level, after the construction phase? In the construction phase, you need many workers, which we call usually laborers. So, how many uh, high income jobs or even middle income jobs are these projects generating? They're not much. Even, uh, I mean, if we go by investment to employment ratio, it's not an issue at all. So employment is never a really a big issue here. The recent they try to show it initially by showing these initial constructions, which usually goes on for 4 5 years and may require some local. But even then, locals hardly get appointed there, employed there, because these local peoples, especially when they are in tribal dominated areas, they are not really keen on doing that kind of job, that kind of construction work, which it requires. And they also lack the kind of skills that a hydropower project requires. And these are increasingly getting more sophisticated and more mechanized, requiring less and less involvement. So it is not an issue. But if we look at the other issue, the construction bill itself, uh, the kind of carbon, the kind it emits, the phase of construction, the thousands of cars that fly there for say 4 or 5 years, and the other things. So this has also been another issue which scientists have long been citing, that to the argument, countering the argument of presenting hydropower as a climate friendly measure. First, it has its own greenhouse impacts, because these projects have been found to produce greenhouse gases, methane and others. And at the same time, the construction phase itself is a high emitting phase. So, how much are we actually contributing towards reduction of emission? That's a point which many scientists have been arguing.
So, Snigdhendu, that's a very interesting point because that is like Teesta stage 3 was given the status of clean development mechanism through United Nations framework convention on climate change. And a lot of investment that is coming for this hydropower is in the name of green energy. So one question which is there, which comes from your what you wrote in Article 14 last year, that you call these projects, at least you call the Teesta 3 project as a financial black hole, because more and more money was being pumped into it through different financial institutions, mostly public sector financial institutions, and the cost was escalating through the years. I think the initial cost was around 5,700 crores, and then it finally, when the project kick-started in 2017, it went to 13,500 crores. So this is just an example, but uh, how do you look at this, the financial, in whether in construction phase or even after, that how these projects are becoming a financial black hole? So some thoughts on this.
Yeah, one clear indication is the complete lack of interest of private sector, or the complete, almost complete withdrawal of the private sector from large hydropower projects. Because private sectors can see their money will get stuck. They are not showing interest. Many big hydro players in the hydropower sectors, like even like Jindals, they have withdrawn. They have from big projects. Uh, so and currently all major big projects. I mean, there are is above 25 megawatts projects. But even I'm not even considering above 25 megawatts. I'm talking of say above 100, above 20, 200, above 1,000 megawatts. These kinds of projects. Where is the private sector? One after another project are getting dropped by them, and the PSUs are taking them over. And when I asked a senior NHPC officials and also spoke to our senior power sector official, uh, they clearly said that hydropower at present is not an economic venture, it's a political project. It's related to national security. So that's how they look. If we look at the hydropower boom, hydropower push uh, in Kashmir and Ladakh, what are they, especially the Indus, our Indus projects, how we are expediting projects to exploit as much of Indus water as we can take. It is again political. The projects are getting nod, everything, the approval is coming not from financial or other considerations, but on considerations of national security. And national security has emerged as a real big issue now, because if we look at the Char Dham project, then we can see that the Supreme Court had been uh, criticizing it. I mean, not had been hesitating to give it clearance. Supreme Court was not giving it clearance, and the government was actually, I mean, in the public, they were telling that it's a Char Dham, it's a grand project to unite all big pilgrimage sites and some. It's a big one grand project. But in the court, they were saying that there were some several hundred small single projects, unrelated. So that's what they were arguing in court. Even after that, they were not getting the approval. Finally, if we see what helped them triumph over the opposition and trump everything else, is their argument of national security. When they told the court that this Char Dham project is part of national security from Chinese aggression, it is at that point that the court decided to let them do. So we can see that national security has emerged as a major argument behind large projects in sensitive geographical and ecological regions, that, be it Kashmir or Ladakh, or be it Uttarakhand or Himachal, be it Sikkim or be it Arunachal. And because national security is such a sensitive issue that often uh, it, it tends to eclipse other concerns. So, the concerns that the local residents of Arunachal are raising against the proposed 10 gigawatt dam on Yarlong cycle, that will, in the national media, that voices will not come up when compared to the question of national security from China's water aggression. So this is where this entire see right now our hydropower project is still focused largely in the Himalayan. There are projects in the south, there are projects in other areas also, but it's mostly the Himalayan belt. And this Himalayan belt is entirely within 100-kilometer range of international border. The entire Himalayan range, the international border goes through the Himalayan range. So this has put the local resistance movement also in some spot of bother about how they counter this argument of national security. Because otherwise, if from their perspective, if we compare the pros and cons, they are saying that the cons are much higher, heavier than the pros. And even when we uh, analyze the financial issues with related to projects like such big grand project like Teesta 3, then we can see that it hasn't benefited financially. It has emerged as a burden on the state.
Yeah, so this is so what we have also witnessed in Arunachal, in other places in the recent past, that a number of activists who have raised questions on the viability of these projects have faced some or the other action from the authorities, and some of them have also like faced jail time. So so the argument of national security, whether in Himalayas or even as we are witnessing in Great Nicobar, that's something which is being used to trump all sorts of concerns which are being raised by communities and environmentalists. Snigdhendu, so we with because we have less time, there are two questions which I want to ask you. Um, One is that whether that that in the case of Teesta 3, the chief minister of Sikkim last year had made statements about how certain companies and corporates had actually benefited a lot from cost escalations which happened. Uh, and and subsequently and there were problems in there were technical and procedural lapses as well in giving contracts. There were companies which were made which were given contracts who had no experience in hydropower. So uh, so can you briefly like highlight or tell that who benefits? Are there select entities, private entities, which actually benefit from this financial mess?
Yeah, actually, I have no clear idea about that. But what people involved in anti-dam protests, they usually use a word which they call hydropower lobby. They say there is a strong hydropower lobby which holds significant influence on government officials and a section of politics. And they say that this interest in political and administrative interest in hydropower projects come from the fact that the initial investment is huge. The initial investment requirement is huge. So leakage to even a small percent of that huge initial investment can really make some of the people wealthy enough and can really change fortunes of people involved. Some of it. So that is how they tend to describe uh, the power of the hydropower lobby.
Another question which comes, which is actually like provoked from a lot of discussions with certain ground organizations like affected citizens of Teesta, even from some of your work which you have, which has regularly appeared in the media. Um, what are the possible alternatives? Because what are the possible alternatives which are being discussed? Because you do mention small scale hydropower projects as as an alternative which might serve the purposes of the community. So would you like to talk about some of those alternatives which are being considered?
Yeah, see, generally when I speak to scientists or policy experts and local people on the solution, because India definitely needs energy, needs power. India is still a power hungry country, power hungry, power starved country, I would say, because we know the kind of our per capita global use is way below global average. So people in India need much more electricity. So India will need to expand its electricity production. That's there is no denying in it. At the same time, the international pressure on reducing thermal power capacity is also increasing. So even though India hasn't said that it will wind up, India has taken its time, and it has rightfully has taken its time, because for a just transition, which countries like India deserve, uh, these closure of uh, this thermal power sector will have to be given sufficient time, and it will need to be given at least a few couple 2 3 decades. And the Western powers, which are the main culprits for this warming, have to take up more responsibility, so that in countries like India, Brazil, and Indonesia, they can have the time to for a smooth and slower transition. This is one thing. So, and the other aspect is that solar power, which is which has grown quite exponentially, seems to have lesser conflict with people than large hydro projects. Even though large solar projects also have many conflicts, as we have seen from the experiences in Western India. Initially, they are appearing to be, at least by the way they are being projects are being implemented, they are appearing not to be so green as they were touted to be. Uh, but still, they appear to be in less conflict. But at the same time, if we talk to people of Ladakh, if you talk to people, if we there will be a consensus, if of sort, if we talk to Gasolepcha, say of uh, Sikkim, of Jongu Valley, if you talk to, say, uh, Bhanu Tatak of Arunachal Pradesh, and if you speak to Sonam Wangchuk of Ladakh, they will all agree that scrap large projects, because a kind of one of the this recent unrest in Ladakh, these recent protests in Ladakh, the demand for schedule, you can't separate it from the public apprehension that government is trying to take away large swathes of land for large solar projects. The land where the Pashmina herders use for their grazing activities and these lands, because they are not really on pen and paper, these are government land. So they are wasteland. They are being used by the local people for centuries. But on paper, it's government land and government can take them over any time. And there is great apprehension among local people that government might acquire this, not acquire, take this whole land and hand it over to a solar power project. So this apprehension is everywhere from Assam to Arunachal to Ladakh about large projects. And even scientists and policy researchers, they are also arguing now increasingly in favor of smaller number of many smaller projects, chain of smaller projects. It may take long time. It may be a bit more financially challenging, but that is the real challenge to face to find out a solution at a time when climate is become increasingly unpredictable, when we know our monsoon pattern is changing, when you know there will be more extreme events like cloudbursts, and there are threats of glacial lake outburst floods, and like this glacial lake outburst flood of Sikkim, this was uh, this was predicted 23 years ago, first warned of, and for 2 decades, in every year, almost in every year, one or another scientific report came up warning about this impending disaster. Everybody said, no, no, we are fine. And now we can see what happened to Teesta 3. And now even Teesta 5 is stuck. Even Teesta 5 has been, even got hurt. And it actually, this recent damage in Teesta 5 happened at the same place where I visited a couple of years ago, and where villagers had showed me photographs of dozens of houses. All of them have their walls cracked. The people are getting tired of repairing their own houses. And whenever this happens, the NHPG officials and the government blame it on natural occurrences. It's a complex chain, but the issue is not simple. India needs more power. India needs to increase its uh, uh, energy production. At the same time, India cannot go on building, more coal mines. There are problems with large solar projects. There are problems. Wind project is limited to mostly Western India and Southern India. So that's we have a problem, and in the northeastern region and the northern India, in the hilly regions, which were initially a good storehouse of uh, uh, hydropower and energy, are appearing to be increasingly unsustainable. So I think that researchers and activists and scientists and policy makers, they who have experience and specialization on a wide range of issues, they need to come together, find out solutions, because right now no one really has a solution.
Thanks, Snigdhendu. With that, we come to the conclusion of our interaction. And the way you summed it up, the need for energy, and the fact that we cannot be relying on fossil fuels, that we cannot be relying on large projects, this seems to be framing. And probably I would add that the consumption oriented society which is there, so that these three need to be harmonized and balanced. Any last thoughts which you might have, which you think need to be we need to speak about? So
No, this is what that current situation requires multidisciplinary exchange of ideas, from connecting from grassroots to specialized scientific research, because in these changing times with many changing equations, uh, we need to have a fresh look at our energy policy, a comprehensive energy policy. We can't take anyone out separately without considering the whole.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Snigdhendu, for joining us and giving your time.
Thank you for
And
choosing this important issue. Because, this pressing issue, we must try and find a solution so that the conflict could be reduced.
yeah, it was really a pleasure to hear your thoughts. And at a time, the irony is that at a time when we talk about the crackdown on media, when we talk about the ongoing deterioration in journalistic standards, this is ironically also the time when we have witnessed very good journalism in the history of our country, uh, and your contributions towards it, I would cite as an example of that. So yeah, it has been a pleasure interacting with you, and yeah, thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thank you.